Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and welcome to my Learn to Crochet series. Today I'm going to share with you how to weave in your ends. Let's go. Let's talk weaving in your ends. I just have a small little swatch here, but no matter the size of your project, a lot of times you're going to have at least two ends that are hanging out here when you finish up a project. And those need to be woven in both to not have random pieces hanging out and to secure the ends of your work so it doesn't unravel. So I just have a little tiny swatch here to show you the idea, but the concept is the same no matter what size your piece. So to weave in your end, you're going to need a tapestry needle. And I prefer a metal tapestry needle, and this clover one has a little bit of a bent end to it, and that just makes getting under your stitches really easy. So I really like that type of tapestry needle, but totally a matter of personal preference and, frankly, what you have laying around. There are two main things that you need to focus on when you weave in your ends. The first one is that you want it to be hidden, especially if you don't have a distinctive front and back side or wrong and right side, or it's something that even if it has a wrong and a right side, you're maybe going to see the back of it. Sometimes you're going to want your woven in end not to stand out and be a distraction from your beautiful work that you've done. The second piece is that you want to be sure that this end especially is secured, because if this comes undone from wearing or washing, your piece could start to unravel, and that would be very sad. So let me show you how I weave in my ends. This is something that's a bit of personal preference and also can just be like trial and error as you work with different shapes and types of stitches, because the more open your fabric is, the harder it is to hide them and secure them. If you're making something with really high texture, you want to be sure that you're not mucking up the texture with how you weave in your ends. So just a few little tips here, and then really just do what feels good and looks right to you. That's the most important. So I'm going to take my tapestry needle, and these can be a little hard to thread. I'm going to show you my tip for threading my tapestry needle. What I do is I wrap it around the fat end of the fat end of my tapestry needle, and I pinch it really nice and tight with my left hand here. Then I slide it off, and you can see I've got that little tiny loop of yarn, and then I just thread that loop through my tapestry needle, and I find that that's the easiest way to thread my tapestry needle. They make threaders and stuff for tiny needles and thread. I'll be honest, I don't know if they make them for bigger ones, but that's a fail-proof way that you don't even have to stick the yarn in your mouth and get it wet. So at my end here, almost always the first thing I do is I put, excuse me, I insert through one of these loops at the side just to kind of secure my yarn back down right on the edge there, and to help make that edge look nice and neat. So I'm not like weaving back in here and potentially pulling that edge in. I want to keep that edge nice and straight. And with that, you need to be conscientious of how tightly you're pulling that, because if I pull that really tight, you can see it curves the corner of my work there. So you want a real happy medium between securing your yarn and pulling it so tight that you're distorting your work. Then a lot of times what I like to do is then just work my yarn back under the stitches, and I will go a few stitches one way, and then I'll travel down a row and go back and forth a couple times. That motion of going back and forth is what secures your yarn in place. But let's say that this is my back side of my work and I'm weaving in my ends here, it can be easy to forget what that might look like on the right side of your work. And one of the ways I find best to check to see if this is going to show up on the right side is while my tapestry needle is in my fabric here, it's a different color. And so it's going to be easy to see where that yarn is going to come through on the other side. So I can flip it over and I can see that for the most part, it's pretty well hidden. And since my yarn is the same color, it's very unlikely to show through on the other side. And so let's see, I'm going to pull gently through to make sure I'm not, again, scrunching up my fabric there. A lot of times I like to just give it like a little tug to make sure, especially if it's a wearable or something and you're going to have some give, you don't want that scrunching up your fabric. So you can see when I flip this over, you can't see where I wove in that end. Then to go down to the next row, I'm going to go under this loop and under this loop to just kind of keep it trapped inside my fabric. If this was a back side where you were definitely not going to see, you could just skip over and go down. But then you're going to have that loop over the back of your fabric. It could get caught. It is going to be more obviously seen. So I just, generally speaking, try to hide my ends as much as possible. So there are a couple little loops traveling down to the bottom of the next row. So I'm just going to slide my tapestry needle through there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back through the bottom of the stitches, just like I did with the previous row. Right there, going in the opposite direction. And then I like to think that 3 is a good happy medium. Again, I'm going to make sure I'm not tightening my yarn too much. Depending on how much you plan to wash and or wear and how sad you would be if things came apart might depend on how many times you go back and forth. If you've got a really long end and a big blanket or something like that you plan on probably washing quite a bit, can't hurt to weave in a little more instead of a little less. So same thing, I'm going to go down a row now through some loops and then work back in the other direction. And so then I have gone across, down, across, down, across. So that's my 3 changes in direction, or going 3 directions, to really make sure that that's secured in nice and tightly. And then you can just flip over to the other side and see, does it still look the way you want it to look? And if it doesn't, you can always go in with your tapestry needle and find that loop that or the yarn that you've woven in and pull it up a little bit and undo something if you need to. I hope you found these tips for weaving in your ends helpful and that you can go forward finishing your projects confidently. It is always my goal to help you grow confidently in your craft. If you feel like this video has done that, I would love it if you would like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any tutorials in the future. Thank you again for joining me today, and happy crafting!